Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us for today's Wi-Fi Designer webinar. This session is being recorded, and if you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the questions panel. Be sure to download the handouts under the handouts section. And at this point, I will introduce today's presenter, who is Bruce Miller, Cambium Network's VP of Enterprise Marketing. Bruce, you can take it from here.
Great, thank you, Olivia, and thank you everyone for joining today. We are going to be covering Wi-Fi design and talking to you about a new tool, or actually it's an existing tool that we've updated, Wi-Fi Designer. Before I start, I wanted to make sure everybody has an online available browser with them. If you are able to try out the tool yourself, you can do so, whether during the broadcast directly or afterwards. This is a free tool that's directly on the Cambium website. We'll talk through a little bit of setup here, and then we'll go into a demo so you can see how it's used in real life. Just to start off here, I want to talk a little bit about Cambium. Just one slide here to talk about overall the solutions that we provide as an organization. The Cambium Gigabit Wireless Fabric is what we call it. Really extends end to end from 2-meter connections to your Wi-Fi or your Bluetooth, all the way out to 200-kilometer connections for backhaul of wireless traffic for ISPs and for long-haul operators, and everything in between. So it's a unique portfolio in the space, from the broadband side of things all the way to the edge, the ability to transmit multiple gigabits of wireless data. We're going to be focusing on the edge specifically. So if you look at this diagram here, which kind of talks about towers traversing wireless connections across mountains, all the way down to the edge. The edge is the portion there that you see in orange, where you're actually delivering Wi-Fi to the local user, the last 100 feet, last 100 meters, so to speak, within buildings and the surrounding areas. Cambium does this overall with the lowest cost per megabit, and manages everything, and we're converging everything into a single dashboard. So just to give you a bit of perspective on what we do, but again, we'll focus in more directly on the edge of the network, where the Wi-Fi products that Cambium provides focus, and we will talk about solutions for deploying that part of the network. So what is Wi-Fi Designer? It's a tool that's actually been around for some time with Xeris. Xeris was a company that focuses on enterprise-grade Wi-Fi, and Cambium acquired Xeris about 9 months ago, and so now it's part of the Cambium Enterprise product line. So what we've done is taken this tool and updated it with support for the broader range of Cambium Wi-Fi products, both cnPilot and Xeris, as well as supporting Wi-Fi 6. So the new Wi-Fi 6 products from Cambium, which are now available to order and on the website. We'll talk about those a bit as we walk through this as well. What the tool does is allows you to basically design a Wi-Fi network. You place the APs on a map, it predicts the coverage, and then you can generate an output BOM and report. So the standard kind of things you'd expect from a design tool. But the real unique things here are the fact that it focuses specifically on Cambium network designs, which have unique capabilities from the perspective of software-defined radios, from the perspective of high-density Wi-Fi that is common with the Xeris architecture. And so when we talk through the demo and we walk through that, you'll see how those types of items are unique in terms of what we do. So the product is available for free online, accessible from anywhere, any web browser, automatically updated, all the benefits of a cloud-based tool that you can provide. So I'm going to jump here at this point to a poll, just to kind of just to get a little bit more familiar with you guys as an audience here. If you could just do a quick response here on the poll. Simply, have you used Wi-Fi Designer before? I'd like to know a little bit about who we're working with here from an audience perspective. If you have used the tool, have some familiarity, hit yes, otherwise no, and then we will take a quick look at the results here. So let's see, we're getting in number of responses. So it looks like a chunk of you guys have used the product before, which is good. So you're starting out with some familiarity in some cases. And let's say I'll just do a quick share of the results. So we have about a little over 2/3 no and about 1/3 yes. So, all right, so that's good. We are, we're talking to obviously a variety of folks out here in terms of using the tool or otherwise. So it gives me an idea of kind of who's in the audience here today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those two aspects that we just went through here, high-density Wi-Fi and software-defined Wi-Fi. And then when we do the design tool demo, you'll kind of see what we're talking about in terms of the specific capabilities and the unique characteristics of the Cambium product. So what I have here is a standard Wi-Fi outline or layout here from a floor plan perspective that you might expect. You have classrooms, for example, office spaces, maybe an auditorium. This could be a school. The far right, office cubes or walled offices. And typically when you design a Wi-Fi network, you design it based on the number of access points relative to the number of devices that will be connecting. So in the auditorium area, a lot more people, so you add more APs to that location, and this ends up being a 16 AP design. So when we talk about scalable Wi-Fi from Cambium, and this comes over from the Zurus acquisition, is what's we talked about high density access points, meaning more radios, higher density, higher capacity to support lots of devices and users because we have more radios in a single AP. Zurus had APs up to 16 radios actually at one point. Today, the most we do is 4 radios, but it's a unique product in the industry supporting hundreds and hundreds of connections, multi-gigabits of data. And when you do that in a single access point, you can replace multiple APs with one. So this is the concept here, 5 access points that are high density oriented in those classrooms and in the auditorium, and then the standard access points otherwise. And in this case, what the net is that you've saved the equipment about half. You've deployed half the equipment, which means less infrastructure to support it. So those are unique radio characteristics of the Zurus product. And when you get into the design of that network, you have to have certain considerations based on that. And that's one of the things we'll show you in the tool. The second thing is software-defined Wi-Fi. And again, kind of contrasting the traditional versus the Cambium approach. In a software-defined Wi-Fi space, you typically have 2 radio APs. They're fixed with the different bands of Wi-Fi, which are in the microwave region, 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz. Based on color, you can see the blue here is 5 gigahertz, and the green is 2.4. The challenge that you have is most networks today have been moving as much as possible to the 5 gigahertz space. So most of your devices today support 5 gigahertz. And there's good reason for that. There's a lot more spectrum available, a couple dozen channels, depending on where you live in the world versus 3. So 8 times or more the bandwidth. Usually the spectrum in 5 gig is a lot cleaner. So you get your best design, your best performing Wi-Fi networks by operating in 5 gig. The problem is when your AP infrastructure is 50-50, you waste a lot of that radio space. In the picture right here, you see I have a majority of devices in 5 gig in blue and only a couple in 2.4, but yet my infrastructure is fixed at 50-50. And so the Cambium Zurus approach, whether it's a 2 radio AP or a 4 radio AP, I'm showing a 4 radio here, but you can see how I can customize that design. I can put 5 gigahertz radios. In fact, I could put all 5 of the radios, or all 4 of the radios into 5 gig if I wanted to. And those are the best performing networks. So in this case, I can balance my radio count to the installed base of clients. And in this case, I have the equivalent of 3 APs and 5 gigahertz. So, I have a 3-to-1 device ratio if you look at it that way in terms of able to support the high bandwidth APs. So that's another key capability to be able to design that network to consider. And then finally, application performance requirements. So what we have here in terms of typical applications that are on the network, how much bandwidth do they take? And this is a key criteria when it comes to network design, to Wi-Fi design, obviously. So, a simple streaming music application, your Spotify, your Apple Music, 500K, and you can see, web browsing actually is pretty intense when it comes to all the graphics and the things that you're designing or downloading. The recommended, average bandwidth or the type of thing you're looking for is a couple meg. And then as you get into video, you start getting into some really larger numbers. And there's 8K and AR, VR, even beyond this. So this is a consideration to make when you're designing the network. How much bandwidth does the average user need? And if you're talking about someone that's, general public access, you need to consider a meg or two sustain traffic to them. As those requirements go up, you need more bandwidth, which then impacts your design from a number of radios perspective. There's also consideration in terms of density, location types. So depending on where you are, if you're in a very dense stadium or a place where you have people packed in with individual seats that are fixed next to each other or otherwise. That's a very large density relative to, say, an open space like a warehouse or even in a hotel. You get people spaced out, one individual or a couple per room, spread out across multiple rooms, and everything in between. So when it comes to Wi-Fi design, you need to look at the density and then estimate the number of devices that will be there on an average area. So, take a classroom there somewhere in the middle, 20 to 30 square feet per person, 2 or 3 square meters, for example, and then you can add up the number of devices that would be there, and you can decide, hey, do I need to get more than one access point in this area? And then the formula ultimately for deciding that, there's a kind of conclusion here on that equation there. The number of radios on the APs then is based on the total amount of bandwidth and the amount of bandwidth per radio. So I won't get into the exact details of the calculation, but the bottom line, high-level recommendations. For most situations, you're going to want to design your network for the 20 range of users per radio is reasonable. If you're doing high bandwidth video, obviously less than that. If you're in a high density area, for example, we mentioned a convention center or an auditorium or things like that, then the number can go up if they're just using it for general internet access. So a couple of rule of thumbs. We tend to see our high density designs get into, the 40, 50, 60 type of range. Normal kinds of office spaces or classroom spaces, the 15 to 25 range. But I've certainly seen criteria that it's below 10. But these are the kinds of things that ultimately will then determine the number of APs that you are designing, not just coverage, but capacity. And I would say that over time, the design criteria has really shifted from that coverage to capacity consideration. So something to keep in mind when you're making these designs. We'll get into the tool and we'll show you the layout and how you lay out based on coverage, but you need to keep the density components and the capacity component in mind at the same time. Okay, we're going to jump into the demo here, but I wanted to first push another poll out to you. If you could just do a quick response here based on existing tools that you have used in the past. And there's a lot of different tools out there that are leveraged for Wi-Fi design, whether they're from third-party vendors or from the enterprise vendors like say Cambium with Wi-Fi Designer, or if there's other tools that might be brought to bear. There's a pretty wide range of products out there. So wanted to get a sense of what you might be using for that. So a few options there on the screen, and looks like the votes are coming in here. Interesting range. Okay, I guess about what you'd expect from that perspective. I'll get it up here. So about half of you are voted, and then we will move on. Okay, so let's push those results out there. So you see kind of a smattering here between the different third-party vendors, and a fair amount of you have used Wi-Fi Designer, and then obviously other as well. So I was expecting other might be even higher than that, but it's a good range here in a mix. So that gives us some nice information in terms of the kind of products that are being used out there. Okay, so I will switch over next to a demo of the tool here. And thanks everyone for participating there in the polls. Let me make this screen a little bit bigger here. So I'm just at the Cambium website here, and very easy to find the tool just under our software section. There is an application, Wi-Fi Designer, and that'll take you to a page here. There is a video note here that is about I think it's about 10, 12 minutes, something like that, that walks through the tool, kind of an instructional video that shows you all the different features. I'll go through a lot of that here today on the demo, but just so for reference, that video is a good way to get some familiarity with the tool itself. So you can log into Wi-Fi Designer here, and you can register as a user, and that allows you to actually save your designs and multiple floor plans, and then you can go back and use them later. You can email those designs to you. So certainly want to recommend that you register as a user. I'm just going to show you as a demo. You can come in here as a guest user here today. So that'll just make it simple to jump in here. You can't save these designs. You can't email them to yourself. So it is a little bit more restricted in terms of what you can do. But the guest user is kind of a demo way of using the product. All right, so now that we're jumped in here to the application itself, you first want to load a floor plan up here. So I'm just going to say this is a test map, and I'm going to upload a floor plan that I have saved off here. And then I'm going to pick an environment here. So I'm going to design a Wi-Fi network for an office space. And so what this parameter actually does, it's interesting, it will change the overall attenuation expectations of that environment to be less or more. So you can use the tool and get very specific and draw walls and model the building exactly, or you can do a kind of a higher level approach and say, I'm not going to get into all those details. I'm just going to say the average attenuation there is akin to an office or an apartment or a warehouse. Obviously in a warehouse, less attenuation, open spaces. Walled office is going to be a lot tighter because the expectation is that you have walls around every single office. A hotel, even tighter most likely in terms of the space available, or perhaps similar. So in this case, I'm going to use office cubicles, but then I'm going to go back later and show you how you do a design with specific walls. All right, so I've loaded the map up there. The app will tell you kind of where to kind of go next, and the first thing here is to do a calibration. So you pick an area within the space here, and you can see here in the upper left, I've just selected the space and clicked there for the width of that room, which I know is 30 feet. So I'm going to say that's 30 feet. So now the map is calibrated from a size, a space perspective. Okay. The next thing it's telling me to do is to save. In this case, I'm not going to. I'm just going to get right into the design here and add some access points. So the access points, you can see the full list of everything that Cambium supports, including some older products as well. This release, by the way, went live literally yesterday. So this is a brand new release of the product that adds our Wi-Fi 6 products, as well as the rest of the Cambium product line and all of the existing Xeris products as well. So you can see a whole collection of products there, and you can tell a little bit about the product in parentheses. Just to show you kind of the range here, I'm going to start off with a couple of the E600 CN Pilot APs. And then I'm going to add a couple of the Xeris XV2 access points. And then I have a high density location here. So I'm going to select a 4 radio high density Xeris access point. All right. And then I'm going to start to just lay these out here. So there's some conference room areas up front that are high density. So I'm going to put those access points there. This probably wouldn't be a normal design by mixing, two different kind of product lines like this, but it's just for a reference point to kind of show you how we want to approach this here. So I've laid these out roughly within the space, and then I'm going to come down here and set the criteria to what signal level I want. So I'm going to hit 65 dB. That's a good level to support a Wi-Fi network. 65 dB, negative 65 dBm to be more precise. Basically sets the expectation for how much propagation of RF you have in that, or the level of RF that you're getting at the device based on the propagation parameters within the emulated environment that we're talking about here. If I wanted to do location services, for example, you typically would be at negative 60, so you would tighten up a little bit so you can see you have less coverage at negative 60. Let's just go back to negative 65, and then you can place the APs such that you have coverage across all the areas based on that. So in this case, pretty straightforward because I don't have a lot of have a lot of open cube space and there's not a ton of attenuation. So 4 APs looks to be plenty to cover all these different areas. Now the interesting point then comes next, where once you get a layout, you can get into specific RF design criteria based on that. So what I'm going to do here, back to actual size here, is talk about specific band types that I want to show. So for example, I can come in here and I can set this to 5 gigahertz so I can see specifically, let's see, this thing likes to zoom in and out here significantly. There we go. So I'm going to set this up for 5 gig specifically, right? So you see the coverage a little bit less there for 5 gig because it doesn't propagate as far. So I might want to move, some of these access points a little more around to fully cover the space for 5 gig. But that is a good way of doing a network design where 5 gig is kind of like your least common denominator in terms of space. Apologies here, this browser likes to move here a little bit with my zoom on this mouse. 5 gigahertz does not propagate as much through the space, so setting a design to be based on a 5 gigahertz design is actually kind of a good way of getting a view of what's going on. And then you can change that. I can come back to basically show both, which I'll go back to here, and you can kind of see a little bit of expansion of coverage there. Now, the interesting thing then is to get into the software parameters of these products from a radio perspective. This then goes back to the capacity discussion I talked about. So if you design for 5 gig, if you then talk about how you can optimize the network for the most capacity, you look how you can optimize your design for 5 gig. So for example, in these Zerus APs here, I double click and I see that there's a 2.4 radio and a 5 gig radio. It might be a little hard to see on the browser or on your browser there, but this radio has this AP has 2 radios, 1 in each band. I can double click on that band and I can actually enable or disable that band, or in the case of the Zerus AP, change it so that it's both in 5 gig. So that's called software defined radios. You can see it changed the coverage a bit. But now I actually have this access point operating in 5 gigahertz on both radios. So now it's showing me 5 gig coverage, which is the highest capacity capability there. I can do the same over here. And this is the type of criteria, the way that you may design some of these Wi-Fi networks when you're talking about optimizing the capacity, is actually creating 5 gig only designs and able to program or show that software-defined radio capability that we talked about. Other types of APs, they might be fixed, for example. So it just depends on the type of access point model that you have from either Zerus or Cambium, what their characteristics are. The other thing to note is that you can rotate these APs as well. So if you click on it and you change this circle here, you can see how it rotates. So you can see how the coverage changes. In some cases, when you're using an access point that has coverage areas that are different depending on where you are around the AP, you may want to be able to do that. Okay, so that's software-defined radios. The second key thing here from a design criteria then is multi-radio APs. So in this case, I have a 4-radio access point that I have actually located in the high-density spaces, and it actually has 4 radios that I can manage. So you can see that there's one at 2.4, there's 2 at 5, and there's one that's a monitor radio. So it's actually performing a WIDS-WIPS function, scanning the air for other rogue access points or denial of service attacks or different kinds of threats. So I can change that. So I'm going to pop that one over to 5 gigahertz. Now I have 3 radios operating at 5 gigahertz and 1 at 2.4. Maybe that's fine. Maybe I want to actually make all of those radios 5 gig, and I could do that too. So the last radio I could actually switch over. I can change the power on that as well, so I can tune the view of this network to actually reflect the type of RF design that I want to make in that space. But that's high density Wi-Fi. You can notice that the coverage isn't necessarily larger here. I mean, it's similar, larger. The coverage of these APs are not dramatically different, but it's all about the capacity in this place. And I have conference rooms up here. I have higher density spaces, so that's why I'm talking about putting a high density AP there to cover those kinds of higher densities. And that's where capacity versus coverage comes in. These other 2 or 4 access points are in open areas that are office spaces, cubicles. I'm probably not going to get significant density there, but you could easily get 15, 20, 30, or more users on a given AP. So you want to get a good enterprise-grade access point to support the capacity you need there. But in the higher density spaces, this is where the multi-radio APs come in. And then with this capability of coming in here and setting the radios, I can specifically tune that to 5 gig wherever possible to create the best possible density design. So that's kind of an overview of how you would do a design in an open space where I'm just kind of modeling this based on the type of environment that I'm in. The second way to use this app is by actually getting very specific and drawing walls. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to an outdoor environment, okay, and then apply that. And what you'll see now is the coverage now increases because it assumes that there's no walls and that the RF propagates everywhere freely. And so based on that, you can then come in here and draw the specific walls of the environment. So I'm going to start with a brick wall, which is going to be the outside of the space. So I'm going to start here and just drag drop, and then you can kind of see how the application starts to adjust based on that. The attenuation outside of the building is cut because I have this brick wall in place. And so I'm just going to trace the outside of the area, running into my thing there and there. So now I've outlined the building, and now you can see the RF is actually scrunched in a bit. I could maybe put 2 walls there if I think that the attenuation isn't quite significant enough for the type of building structure that I have. On the inside then of the environment, I have cubicles, for example. So here I can start to draw the cubicle walls, and this is actually a little hard to see here with the pink, but the cubicle walls can then be emulated here, and this will take some time obviously to walk through it all, but I can go through and model all of these areas that are covered by cubicle spaces with this type of wall, and it'll re-render as it goes through. I have some areas here that are separated by drywall. So like these rooms right here are drywall, and I can model those spaces and draw those walls. And we won't go through the whole thing obviously because it would take, probably half an hour to draw everything in, but this is where you get a more accurate picture of the environment specifically, and then all the attenuation factors are built into it. You could start off with a blank map. Maybe you don't have a floor plan. You could start off with just a white canvas here and then just draw the walls using this wall tool from that perspective, as long as you know the dimensions. If you don't have a floor plan, sometimes if you go to the elevator or to the emergency exit areas, you'll see a floor plan placed there. So it can be just as easy as taking your phone and taking a quick picture, saving it off as a JPEG, and then importing it into this app. So there's different ways of getting floor plans if you're doing a design for a building that you don't have the actual CAD drawings or the originals. But you can draw that, or you can import it. It makes it very easy to set it up. So at the end of the day, you end up with a design. So here I ended up with 4 access points in my design. I can then email and save that off as a report. And I've actually, I won't do that directly here, but what I've set up here is a report that I had previously done. And it'll spit out a simple design document here, a PDF with an intro. It'll show you the floor plan and then the bill of materials. So it's really as simple as that. The bill of materials, in this case, it had 4 APs of different types, and it's put into a PDF. So you can use this in your proposals. If you have a customer proposal that you're putting together, if you're a reseller or if you are an end user and you want to show the design to your management before you're approving the project, the design tool can make a nice way of presenting the output of that. Here's my design, here's the coverage. You can see the types of things that you're getting out of it. And if you want to get into the specifics even of RF design, you can come in here and double click on everything, and then maybe even take the heat map off, for example. And you can do that by deselecting over here, and you can pick which pieces you want to see. And then you can talk about even the RF design here, because I have the power levels and the band settings based on that. It might be a little bit hard to see with the background, but all that information is there. So you have a lot of flexibility here in using the app in terms of the types of outputs that you're trying to generate. But this kind of presentation could be nice to show in the end the outcome of the overall deployment. All right, so I think that pretty well sums up the demo in terms of the things that you can do. I haven't shown you all of the different capabilities. The product, isn't a full-featured as some of the other third-party tools that we talked about, but it helps to ultimately, in summary, design the Wi-Fi network, that provides the specific outcomes for generating a Cambium design. And it incorporates unique aspects of the multi-radio APs and the software-defined APs that we support, so that you can start to make those capacity-oriented type of designs. Again, you can look at the 5 gig specific coverage, which is going to be important for those capacity designs, and focus your orientation and your methodology around doing that, so you can customize it to the requirements of the environment. Every environment's different, every situation's different. It's less today about the coverage as it is about the capacity, but in the end, both are important to designing and the final outcome that you come up with. Okay, so we will go to the wrap-up section next, but I did want to make sure that we had some time for questions, and you have a questions area within your interface there. Depending on which browser you're using, it might look different. I know I'm running on iPad, and there's a question mark. So if you have any questions, please pop them in there, hit the question mark, and enter them in there, and we'll capture those up here in a second. So the key takeaways, kind of just to wrap this up and summarize: design for capacity, not only coverage. So the consideration, as we talked about through the formulas, look at the number of radios ultimately that you are deploying based on the number of devices, especially if you're in places like classrooms or auditoriums, public spaces, libraries, places like that. If you're in an office space, if you're in, a warehouse, it's going to be less about capacity in those cases and probably more about coverage. Many types of designs these days have just gone to, a single AP per classroom or a hotel room or hospital room. The density has gotten greater and greater in terms of designing and supporting the capacity needs. So you will end up, in some cases, have pretty cookie cutter designs depending on the environment that you're in. Some of the key benefits of the Wi-Fi Designer tool. So a number of you folks already use it, which is good to see, but very easy and quick to use online, no cost. And it supports the specific requirements for the Cambium APs, which is, I think, key for one of the things we wanted to get across here today, is those are unique aspects that are not going to be modeled by other tools. So, but keep in mind, Wi-Fi Designer is not going to replace a full-bore survey tool when it comes to making active surveys and the like, but it will suffice for the types of requirements that we see on a day-to-day basis for many of the Wi-Fi designs you'll be making. And the access to the tools right there on the website, so easy to get to. Any questions, at all, let us know through the contact section of the website. Hope to see you out there using the tool, and we are interested in feedback as we continue to upgrade and provide additional capabilities for that. But I think the main thing is that, we had a release that just went out here within the last few days, adding all the CN Pilot APs. It has all the Xeris APs, and now it has the Wi-Fi 6 access points. And actually, I didn't show that during the demo. I forgot during the drop down there. The XB3 is the Wi-Fi 6 access point there, and that is now fully supported in the tool. Okay, let's jump over to the questions now and see if what has come in over the course of the time here. Okay, so a question here about access to the portal. So I presume this is Mohammed. I presume this is a question about the partner portal or maybe the poll. I'm not sure actually. Yeah, it should have popped up on your screen if it was a poll. If it's a question about the partner portal for Cambium, there is a channel address there, channel contact information on the channel section of the website that hopefully you can get contact with. All right, let's see, jumping through a couple questions here regarding sound. Hopefully the sound got resolved here, but it sounds like some of you didn't have some sound earlier on, but that it got resolved. Okay, what about outdoor installations? So actually, yes, good question. Let me just show you real quick here. One of the things that we're doing on the outdoor side, we do not have actual modeling for outdoor as of yet in here. But what you can do is you can pick outdoor APs so that you can model or show the placement of those types of access points in the design. So I'm just going to pick one of the Cambium outdoor APs and one of the Xeris outdoor APs. And you can see here, like if I put them on the map in an outdoor location, I can put them as part of design so that they'll show up in the BOM, and I can place them on the map in the place where they actually fit. But we are not at this point yet modeling the antennas that they have. So that is one of the extensions or feature requests we have on the app. I don't have a specific date or time for that yet, but just know that the outdoor access points are in the app and can be chosen from the drop-down so that you can put them in and incorporate them into your BOM, your final design BOM. All right. Let's look down the questions here. More discussion about which tools that people use. Can it be installed on Windows? So this is a cloud-based app. So the one I'm specifically talking about today is cloud. It can be, run from anywhere, from Linux, from Windows, from Mac, or otherwise, because the design tool is actually accessible directly off the website. We have, and maybe this question is alluding to it, a executable version of Wi-Fi Designer that has a bit more functionality. That version is Windows only, but we have not upgraded or updated that as yet. We've been focusing on the cloud tool as of today, and are looking to expand and work some additional features into that tool. So that's what we've been talking about today. All right, question about a localized version of that. Yeah, good input. This is from Bal. I guess if you want to send us your feedback on that specifically, there is an email address, by the way, zurus@cambiumnetworks.com, so that can be a one to send feedback on, or one of the contact points that you see off of the website there. But if you have an inbound question related to localization, let us know, like which specific language you're talking about, and then we can put that into the consideration. All right, is the type of building specifics to different countries? Yeah, good point. So like in UK and Europe, oftentimes the walls are different than they are in the US and Canada. So when you are in the app, you have that choice up here of the wall types. So I'll just go back into the app here, and you can see the different attenuation types will vary by what is selected here. So if I'm picking a cubicle or drywall, drywall is typically 3 to 4 dB. A brick wall can be 10 dB. If you need to emulate something that has more or less attenuation, you can actually draw multiple walls. It's actually a good question in terms of what these numbers are. So that's something that I'll make a note of. We can maybe take the dB attenuation numbers and make them more readily available so you can see what those are, and then set up the expectations for when you're making an actual design. Okay, a good question there. Another question here. Can I load a map as a floor plan and do outdoor Wi-Fi? This is a question from Dave. So as I mentioned before, we don't have the actual antenna patterns for the outdoor products in here yet. That is something that we are looking to do. How do I set the height of the access point? So this tool does not support height. It's a more of a two-dimensional space. So we look at the azimuth coverage of the access point as opposed to the elevation specifically. So we're doing this in a two-dimensional orientation in terms of the actual design today. So again, it doesn't have the sophistication of some of those other tools to do the 3D modeling as of yet. There is a question related to Wi-Fi 6. So I think I showed that a little bit ago, or in the dropdown, but we do have Wi-Fi 6 support here. So the XV series, the first version of that is the XV3. That is supported in the tool. So I can pick that model here, and I'll just add that to the map here. So this is the Wi-Fi 6 access point, the XV3, that is supported in the tool. All right, a lot of good questions here. Another one, can I use one of the APs as a site survey tool? Can I use one of the AP? Oh, I see, as another vendor did. No, we currently don't have that functionality tied into this app, but that's something that, yeah, other vendors have used the APs to do that. We don't have that from a survey perspective. What we do have is when in our management system, the access points, when you put them on a map like this, they will interface with each other and look at coverage, and then adjust the maps that they show in the management app to reflect the inter-AP attenuation. So it's not really a survey per se. It's more of a, here's what the network looks like in a installed state, and it makes an estimate of coverage, but it's not used as a survey tool in that respect. Okay, for a metal door and a window, what type of attenuation can be selected? So, yeah, good question. I mean, every type of device has a different attenuation level. Sometimes you can measure that yourself with an active type of survey tool. The Wi-Fi inspector from Cambium, which is on the same page there, is one of those kinds of things. You can measure the attenuation on one side and then the other, and look at the propagation difference, because every metal door is different. We have these options here in the drop down, as I kind of talked about earlier. And maybe the brick wall can be used to emulate that metal door depending on the attenuation level. So, I think it's a good point to understand these attenuations a little bit more specifically, and that's something that we can document. Okay. Another question here from Alejandro: does the design tool allow more than one floor, for example, in hotel buildings? So, yeah, so what you would do there is you would load different floor maps. So I can save each floor map off as a different floor. So this could be floor 1, floor 2, etc. It does not account, though, for the vertical floor-to-floor bleed, which is probably what you're asking. So no, this tool does not do that. Again, more sophisticated tools will. This tool is focused on the two-dimensional types of designs. Okay. Let's see, the Wi-Fi 6 APs, do they support the software-defined radio? So yeah, the access point, the XV3, actually is a software-defined radio. It's a little bit different than what I showed, though. What it actually supports is an 8x8 radio that can be split into two 4x4 radios. So the access point itself has the ability to reconfigure the 5 gigahertz, but it doesn't have the band selectable. The 2.4 is 6 to 2.4, the 5 is 6 to 5, but I can split that 5 into 2. So when you actually look at this Wi-Fi 6 access point here, it only shows the two radios. The 5 is either a single 8x8 or a combo 4x4, but it doesn't change the coverage to any significant extent. So we are modeling it as a 2-radio AP because that is one of the configuration options. All right. Another question here from Jerish: does the tool have a feature to check the SNR, signal to noise ratio? So no, it's not detecting that, but in the management application, which is our cloud or on-prem application, it's actually managing the network. SNR is measured at that point. This is purely just an emulated predictive tool. We're not doing any actual RF measurements with it. All right. How do we compensate for tree and other obstacles for an outdoor network? So this tool is really optimized more for indoors. If you are designing outdoor networks, there are some other tools from Cambium, CN Heat, and Link Planner that are more geared towards those outdoor design options, and the other products that Cambium produces for outdoor. When it comes to outdoor Wi-Fi, as I mentioned, we support the ability to place the outdoor APs, in the BOM, here, but we don't have the coverage yet. So that is a feature extension for the product that we are looking at. Okay. Okay, can I upload an AutoCAD file and then the software automatically detect layers and types of materials? So no, that capability is not in the tool from that perspective. Again, you're probably going to be looking at more with some of the sophisticated tools to get features like that. Right now, we support different graphical import types. And let's see, does it actually tell me? I'd have to remember what the graphical types are. I believe it's the JPEG, GIF, PNG, TIFF type of file formats. Okay, what about a use in a warehouse that has a large amount of steel racking causing reflections? So you can emulate things with the tool, by picking different wall types, as I mentioned. When you get into racking and spaces like that, then you can start to use like higher attenuation types of options. Perhaps a brick wall might come into play. There's a ton of variables when it comes to a space like that, so it's really hard for a tool to emulate it in perfect. But if you get a sense of what the general attenuation of the environment is, then that's where this environment type can come in. There's a warehouse option here, for example, that will, apply that, and it'll probably open this up or actually it tightens it up quite a bit in terms of design. So those options are available to use as a starting point. But then your mileage will vary. So this is where you may want to then tweak this a little bit. Like maybe I come into the cubicle space, but then I actually apply a environmental variable that's going to add some additional attenuation. So let's just try that real quick. So here's an office cubicle space, and then let's add 5 dB now. Actually take 5 dB away, and you can see that the propagation goes further. So with those types of parameters, you can experiment and dial in coverage levels based on that to get an approximation, and then you could use walls to actually then get more specific. So so the tool has flexibility to emulate, but it's not going to get you the full impact of one of those more expensive tools when it comes to some of those emulations. All right. Let's see, tons of questions here, so it's probably not going to be able to get through all of this. Question here on Cambium access points. Are they able to do mesh configuration? So yes, there are some versions of the access points that have mesh, including 802.11s or otherwise. So I won't get into the specifics per AP, but in general, the access points do support point-to-point or mesh type connections, depending on which version that you're talking about. Okay, accuracy level. What is the proposed accuracy, proposed versus actual? I mean, that's always it depends types of answer, and your mileage may vary. So depending on how much time you spend with the tool doing the emulated walls and coverage areas, the more accurate that you'll get. You may need to do some measurements, like I said, for walls or doors or things that you don't actually have a good sense of how much attenuation there is, but you can do measurements. And then, like I said, using the tool, you have the ability to use an environmental adjustment factor to get more precise about what you're doing, or get into the wall creation to get more precise from there. So some of this will depend on how much time and effort you put into it. But I did want to get back to that capacity discussion, though, earlier. In many cases, it's not going to be about perfect RF coverage design if you do have capacity considerations. So if you are, though, in a more open environment and it's a matter of, do I have 10 or 15 APs to cover this, then it is going to be more important. Your mileage is going to vary based on the kind of criteria that you have and the requirements. Okay. A question here, is Xeris a Cambium product? So yeah, we talked a little bit about that right at the beginning. Xeris as a company was purchased by Cambium about 10 months ago in August of 2019. So the Xeris products are part of the Cambium portfolio now. And so that was kind of reflected here. All these X series APs are Xeris APs. All the E series up here are Cambium APs. In fact, the XV3 is kind of a hybrid. It was the first product that we came out with that was part of the converged hardware platform of both. But all of these products are available now from us as a vendor. So you can see quite a variety of indoor, outdoor, high density, regular density, low cost, value-based products, all the way up to the, premium high density products that are unique in the industry. So it's probably one of the most diverse and flexible portfolios of any vendor out there from that perspective. All right. Let's see. Some of these questions are redundant here. So here's, does a partners get full access to the Wi-Fi design tool? So the tool that we talked about here today is available to anybody. This is free off the website. There is a executable version of Wi-Fi Designer that's a bit older now that we haven't done any updates to. It's more in maintenance mode. That is available to partners, but it is not a product that we are currently updating. So it only supports the Xeris AP. So that might be what you're referring to. And as far as registering it, you can use the tool straight up as a guest user, which is exactly what I did here, or you can register, save your designs, email them to you, get your reports. So there's two different modes. Just understand there's two different modes to using the app. Okay, so we're just not going to be able to get to all these questions. There's a ton of them in here. Certainly appreciate the fact that everybody has been jumping in here, but we will download these questions and look at following up afterwards. Let's see, there's a question about interference. I'm just kind of scanning a couple of these here. How do we account for that? That's really more going to be in a live tool. So that's where the XMS or the CN Maestro is going to do, RF measurements here. We don't actually get into an interference emulation directly in this tool. Okay. Does support channel planning? A question from Sini. No, it doesn't support the channel planning directly here. It does support the band planning. So this is where the 5 gigahertz or the 2.4. So we have that ability in the tool to look at the band. But from a channel planning perspective, that's where the XMS comes in. You can specifically dial up channels, and it will show you the layout of APs based on channels. So just make sure that distinction. This is an emulated predictive tool. Use the XMS for the live network planning and capabilities. Okay, I will wrap it up at that point. Just way too many questions to get to everyone here, but it's good to see all the interest level. We should have all your contact information from the registration, so we can follow up with questions, post webinar. I believe, Olivia, this was recorded, correct? So this presentation will be available afterwards, as well as the recording. So with that, I think we will wrap up, and I want to thank everyone here for joining today. Check out the handout section if you haven't already, and there is a copy of the presentation there. And just remember the tool right there up on the website. Interested in your feedback, interested in dialogue about the tool. It's definitely not a tool that does everything, but we are focusing it on some of the key use cases for Cambium. But we will plan on extending it further in the future, and that's where this dialogue and this input from you is going to be very valuable to take as well. So with that, I want to say thank you for joining, and stay tuned for more webinars coming up from Cambium. Have a good day.